Welcome to the Miguel Zulkova Show with me, Miguel Zulkova. Today we're talking about the 5th Railway Era Kamen Rider show, Kamen Rider Gotchard. Let's just get into the story, man. Kamen Rider Gotchard tells the story of a random high schooler known as Hotaru Ichinose, who one day stumbled upon this weird race of beings known as the Kemis created from alchemy at his school. This event led to him being entrusted the power of the Gotchard driver, becoming a member of the school under his school known as the Alchemist Academy, working alongside the Academy to capture all 101 of the Kemis and keep them out of the grasp of the 3 Abyssal sisters, who work with their master, Garyon, who wants to turn the world into gold, before he eventually fights it and is replaced by the Dark Kings, before he comes back and just ends up ultimately being the final villain. In this fight, Hotaru is joined by Rinne Kudo, the daughter of the guy who made the Gotchard driver, and Kurogane Spanner, a guy who hates Hotaru's guts, especially since Hotaru sees the Kemis as his friends instead of the tools that Spanner sees them as. Gotchard is a weird thing to talk about mainly because of how the show is structured. A lot of fans have described the show as a return to how shows like Forza or Double would structure their stories, where most of the show is just them messing around, with little bits of plot and development sprinkled in here and there for the last few episodes. But Gotchard really isn't that, having no different of a structure for something like 01 or Revised, where they are also pretty episodic until about the episode 16 mark, when they start getting to their story more seriously. Except, unlike those shows, Gotchard can barely be asked to focus on any aspect of the story for longer than 2 episodes, before making it a Z-plot until they realize the show is over. A good example of this is the plot point of how the Alchemist Academy system of doing things is flawed and needs to be changed. It's an idea that's never really implemented into the plot, because we don't know anyone from the Alchemist Academy side of our main cast, and there's sort of problems that are tangentially related to the issues of the organization, for the organization just dissipates in the last 5 episodes with very little payoff, leaving it as just a nice idea instead of the potent theme and message they obviously wanted to be. The problem that persists throughout every character arc, as none of them have the focus that they need for their arcs to work beyond the bare themes it's supposed to represent being interesting. Hotaru is really the only character who avoids this, and that's just because he's the typical nice guy main character who doesn't really have an arc. Something that in a vacuum isn't bad, and I think Hotaru can be a fun character, but he's inarguably handicapped by the fact that due to the show's issue of focusing on anyone who isn't him, a lot of the character moments he does have feel really weak. Him either overcoming any struggle he has as fast as it opposes him, or anyone who opposes his love for the Kemis either being so comically evil or undeveloped. Hotaru's retort to it just doesn't have that sauce other writer tags would have while saying stuff just as generic as the stuff Hotaru says. His best moments are with Daybreak, the version of him from the future, and Legend, Ho-Oh Court, a guy who has the power of all previous Kamen Riders. Problem is, both of these guys, despite being really cool, are both in about 3 episodes each and just kind of disappear unless you watch the summer movie. But to be fair, there is one other character Hotaru kind of has an interesting relationship with, which is Rinne, or Kamen Rider Majade, whose arc is basically about her breaking from being so stringent when it comes to the Alchemist Academy's rule. As due to her father leaving the academy in order to keep a better eye on the Kemis, she saw him as a traitor to the Alchemist Academy's rules. Rinne sticks to these rules to the detriment of her own personality and development as a person until Hotaru becomes her friend and breaks down the walls until she finally realized she didn't need to follow the Alchemist Academy rules, like her father, the rules and values that she finds important, finally becoming her own rider in Majade, where her arc and even her relationship with Hotaru just kind of stagnates, as despite how cute her relationship with Hotaru is, all focused on it instantly shifts to her relationship with Atropos, who's one of the 3 Abyssal sisters, who she feels bad for as she sees her constant attempts to ruin her life as her cry for help, being just as lonely as Rinne was when she was a child, as Atropos has her own weird familial relationship with Garyon, who uses her as a tool, but she doesn't notice that, instead seeing him as just a pure father figure. An interesting idea, but it never goes anywhere beyond this until the last 5 episodes, where we learn that Atropos was literally made in the image of Rinne when she was 10 years old, which is why they have the same issues, and then she dies when she realizes that her dad sucks, and merges with Rinne, finally giving each other comfort and friendship they always wanted. But again, it's just not done very well. It's especially not helped the fact that the last episode, who them get together, which should be focused on the 2 of them, is instead focused on their dads, Fuga and Garyon, who, while are important elements in both of their arcs, are just painfully boring as characters. Why do I have to watch 10 minutes of these 2 just to learn that Garyon didn't care about Atropos? Something that I already knew. After them, we have Kurogane Spanner, or Kamen Rider Valvrad, the most misused character in the entire show. Him being Hotaru's biggest hater, finding the care that he has for the Kemis despite all the bad they could do, such as turn people into monsters, as stupid, instead seeing the Kemis as nothing but tools. The show then just doesn't focus on this obvious rivalry much, if not at all, leaving the most of Spanner's scenes just him restating how stupid he thinks Hotaru's ideas are, or him getting beaten up by the monster of the week, making him a rather lackluster character until they introduce the character of Kyoka, his mentor, who made the Valvrad system that he uses. Kyoka benefits Spanner's character by giving him someone that he can actually express himself around, giving his dislike of Hotaru's actual contextualization, as his douchebag personality along with his status as a very strong alchemist is due to Kyoka erasing his memory, causing him to bottle up all his feelings to instead focus on his virtue, causing him to stagnate as a person. He does not be able to gain the strength to someone like Hotaru, can, who's willing to continually evolve his worldview as a person, since he isn't stuck in the same spot as the person as like Spanner is. Spanner only grasps this once Garyon forces him to remember his parents' death, causing him to lose himself and he feels that his entire life is a lie, till he realizes how much his parents and Kyoko genuinely believes in him, causing him to overcome his feelings of pain and betrayal to continue fighting against Garyon in his parents' memory, in the best way that he sees fit, leading him to become Kamen Rider Valvrat instead of just Valvrat. Then he stops getting focused again, basically acting the exact same as he did before, outside of the fact that like Hotaro doing anything doesn't make him cry. The show not properly focusing on Spanner again until episode 46, where we learned that he apparently learned a wrong lesson from his parents' last words, as he thinks fighting in their memory requires sacrificing himself, till Hotaro tells him that's stupid and he deserves to live. Something that Spanner takes to heart, allowing him to evolve once again, Hotaro's optimism finally rubbing off on him. Another good idea for an arc, but again, Spanner just does not get the focus necessary to make it more impactful. Spanner being a worse instance of this than Rinne, because it generally felt like they didn't know what to do with him at times, and when they finally played the cards, it's just disappointing, because you wish this is how they use his screen time instead of just him staying around, or saying his catchphrase, or how I mentioned before, just getting beaten up. Something that wouldn't matter to me in any other show. But it does here, because it feels like that's what half his screen time is just dedicated to. None of it beneficial to his character beyond maybe the period before he became an actual Kamen Rider. After him, I don't know what to talk about, but the side characters are alright, but I don't feel like talking about them. I could maybe talk about the Abyssal sisters or the Dark Kings, because they're a little interesting, but the 3 Dark Kings all just die with a very little personality they all had, feeling rather unexplored due to their short screen time. Outside of Gis, the first one we meet, who gets sidelined super hard until Spanner gets his final form, because they vaguely had a relationship. The sisters, despite being more of the show, sadly fall into the same trap. Ash's post, like I mentioned, was interesting, but her story doesn't go anywhere until it's time for us to learn that she's a clone and then she dies. Lakay is the first to leave the group as she has the most human emotions. It doesn't look how Garyon was treating them, join the Alchemist Academy and trying to become human with Kyoko and Spanner. Most of which happens off screen, and then she just dies in an ultimate episode saying her dream as a human is to fall in love with Spanner. Ignore that they just barely interact on screen after she changes sides. Her death is also important for Clotho, the final sister who wants to keep her messed up family together without realizing how toxic the framework for their family is. Another interesting idea for an arc, the show, let's say it together now, just doesn't give the time it needs to be great. The show not decided to truly end this arc until the very last episode of the whole show, where she also dies anyway, so who cares really? Also, Garyon exists and he's really lame. But yeah, I guess that was it for Kamen Rider Gotchard. It was fun, sometimes, but so much of the show was just kind of boring, and most stuff it wanted me to get connected to or get invested in got screwed over by messy writing and pacing. Especially some good moments here and there. Like, I can see how someone who finds more of the random episodic stuff fun could get into it, but I didn't for the most part. So this is what I'm left with in terms of the show. But hey, that's me. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Gotchard out. Hopefully I like Gav more.